We're going to start with a video, but as we roll into that video, let's give a welcome to Jon Jorgenson.
Has anyone ever told you that you were created to create? I remember the first time somebody told me you were created to create. I was 19 years old, and it got me in such a state because I feared it might be too late for me to create. You see, even from the earliest date, in a garden, in a world free from hate, before Adam was lucky enough to find his mate, before Eve took and before Eve ate, sealing the world to a dismal fate, before it all went down, the first verb found in Scripture is that of create. You were created to create. It all happened at such an alarming rate, and the Creator used every tool in his crate, heaven and earth from a chaotic, empty slate. And yes, maybe God has a lot on his plate, but if he can do all this in less days than 8, imagine what he can do through a lifetime with you when we trust in him and the paths are made straight. You were created to create. In him, we bear every image and every trait, and that includes, of course, this call to create. No matter who you are or what you do, the calling is innate. Not just to make art, no, it's so much more. God wants to use you to do something new, something great. You were created to create. Like, what was more creative than when Christ wiped the slate and made a way for us to enter the gate? What was Christ sent for if not to create a way so that we could finally relate to the Father that loves us even in our sinful state, and to hear his call to us, his call to create. You were created to create. Whether your creation be simple or simply ornate, it's certain to spark some colorful debate. But take hope in the call from the one who is great, and whatever you do, do not wait, because you were created to create.
Alrighty, hi everybody, how you doing? All right, that sounds like teenagers at 10:30 a.m. I like it. How you doing? There we go. I know that this is like the town where Starbucks was founded, so I'm sure you all are just like flying on caffeine all the time. And like it needs to be gloomy in Seattle all the time just to like balance out the caffeine addictions that are happening. I'm sure. Amen. I love it. Well, as I said, my name is John, and that's a video that I created with a team of my friends a while ago for a YouTube channel that I run called the ANIMA series. You saw that name at the end. And since the summer of 2013, we've been making weekly videos all surrounding art and creativity and how these things can be used in our lives as Christians. And we've been able to find a little bit of success, lucky enough, with the ANIMA series. On YouTube, we have over 160,000 subscribers. And some of our videos have gotten pretty popular, and you can call them viral if you want, because they have over several million views. And my creative adventures, though, they started long before I started this project of the ANIMA series, and not all of them have been as successful. The first moment of creative storytelling that I can remember starts when I was around 5 or 6 years old. And even from that young age, I couldn't really read or write, or at least not very well at this time, but I knew that I wanted to write books. Before I could even read books, I knew I wanted to write them. And so what I would do is I would sit my mom down at our word processor. You have no idea what that is, only your teachers know what those are. And she would work on like Windows 95, right? And what I would do is I would walk around and I would tell her a story, and she would type that story into the computer. And over the next several years, as I learned to write, I slowly took her position and would type at the computer. But I would tell her these stories, and we started several books together as co-authors, and of course, we never finished any of those. And as I got older and I got into middle school, my parents gave me my first video camera. And this was a huge mistake at the time on their part. Because my friends and I, we've been very inspired by certain TV shows on MTV. If you've heard of them, they're old. I don't know if you still watch these, but it's where a bunch of guys would get together and they would film themselves doing crazy, dangerous, and oftentimes disgusting stunts. And of course, as a 13-year-old boy, I would watch this and I was like, that is my calling. So me and my friends would get together and we would use my video camera to film. Each summer we made different movies of, jumping off the top of houses, and, every winter we would go sledding in our boxers and things like that. The only things that like a normal teenage boy could think of to do in his free time. Only the guys might understand that. And then, when I got to high school, I did what every normal white suburban teenage boy does. I learned to play the guitar. Because I was like, the girls are gonna love this. And they didn't. But I did join a band, right? I joined a band like everyone kind of does at one point. And the name of this band, we called ourselves Revolution. Not Revolution, Rev-Illusion. And we played one gig. It was at our lead guitarist's girlfriend's birthday party. It was in like her parents' dining room, and we're playing this like intense alternative rock, right? And then soon the band broke up because my lead guitarist and his girlfriend broke up, so we had nowhere to play gigs anymore. And she was basically like our Yoko Ono, if any of you follow the Beatles. And then in college, I started a few more things. I started websites and blogs and small groups, and all of them totally failed, once again. And it wasn't until after I graduated college that I even tasted a little bit of success in a creative endeavor that I'd been trying my hand at. But you see, when I look back at all of my years and all those things that I was doing, I realized that all of those failures weren't really failures at all. In fact, all of those failures, I would really call them warm-ups. They were warm-ups for what I think God was actually calling me to do with the ANIMA series. You see, and writing books. You see, when I was 5, 6 years old, walking around the computer telling my mom these stories, I think in that God was inspiring in me a desire to write books, which is now something I do. With video cameras, the videos I make now are hopefully a little more helpful and a little bit more safe than when I was in middle school. But in it, I had an opportunity to learn how to use a video camera and learn how to film. You see, in all of these adventures that were failing, I think God was actually preparing me for what I believe my calling is today. And because deep down, I really believe this, and this is one thing that I believe to my core, and I have sort of staked my life on this belief. That I believe all of us want to create in some way. I think all of us want to make art. And I don't mean art in like creating artistic videos and writing books. What I mean is I think we all have a desire to contribute something that serves or helps society. I think we all, for the most part, want to play a role in making the world a better place. Especially as Christians, right? And I know this because I get people asking me all the time. They send me emails, or they tweet at me, and they ask me about writing their own blog, or perhaps starting their own YouTube channel. And probably the most popular question I get out of anything, it's not what type of camera should I use, and it's not what type of hosting site should I use for my blog. The most popular question that I get is, how can I not be afraid? And you see, the more emails and the more tweets that I read, the more convinced that I am that in this journey of becoming a creator, or in this journey of contributing something helpful or useful to society, in this journey, fear is actually our biggest enemy. Whether it's our fear of what other people will think, or our fear of not being good enough, or our fear of being judged, or our fear of failing. I believe that fear is the number one thing that keeps us from answering this call, this desire to create. Now, before I dive a little bit deeper into this topic of fear, I want to show you another video. And this is another video that we filmed for the ANIMA series, and it dives a little bit deeper into this topic of fear. This is a video called, "What Are You Afraid of?" I'll be back in about 3 minutes and 55 seconds.
I used to be afraid at night, afraid of the dark, afraid that just beyond the point my eyesight allowed me to see that there was something lurking. Afraid that the darkness itself would somehow surround me and swallow me up. As if darkness were anything more than simply the absence of light. I used to be afraid of tomorrow. Afraid that who I was would continually dictate who I am, and that who I would be might be someone who I didn't like very much at all. As if there was no such thing as being made new. I used to be afraid of opinions. Afraid that though words would not break my bones, they certainly would shatter my dreams. As if I started doing this for the approval of many rather than the glory of one. I used to be afraid of failure. Afraid of losing, afraid of falling, afraid of being wrong, creating busts and looking absolutely stupid, because who am I to think that I could ever actually make a difference? As if those setbacks were anything more than stepping stones on the path to success. I used to be afraid. Used to. But then I did a little research. And by that, I mean I researched and I researched and I researched over and over again. And through all my researching, I kept coming up with the same exact question. What room does fear have? What room does fear have when I cling to trust? What room does fear have when I lean on hope? What room does fear have when I search for something more, when I discover what's good, and when I stand in awe? When I run with perseverance, when I walk by faith, and when I rest in comfort? What room does fear have when I sing with praise? When I take hold of inspiration, explore the possibilities, and step into freedom? What room does fear have when I discover strength, embrace courage, remember peace, declare truth, choose joy, experience life, and conquer death? What room does fear have when I find perfection in the one place I never thought to look? In weakness, when I'm saved by the most unlikely of heroes, by grace, when I'm invited into a relationship more loving and intimate than I could ever imagine as a child of God? I'll ask you again, what room does fear have when I step out of the darkness and I bask in the light? When I let the past be the past and the future has no limit? When they can talk all they want, but their opinion doesn't matter? And when failure is nothing more and nothing less than the road by which I walk my path to success? I'll ask you one last time, what room does fear have when in His Word He tells me 365 times, depending on the translation, do not be afraid? As if I needed to hear that every single day. And as if that's how many times I needed to hear it before I finally believed it. What room does fear have when I make room for love? What are you afraid of?
Thank you, that's so nice. You see, to me, I believe that the act of creation is this. This is how I would define creativity. The act of creation, at its bare roots, is essentially making something out of your own imagination and then sharing it with another individual in the hopes that it will benefit them in some way. It's like a second grader coming home with her art project to her mom and dad and saying, "Look, Mom, look, Dad, look what I made. Is it good? Do you like it? Did I do a good job?" And you see, there's so many things that can go wrong in this process, right? You could mess up while you're making it and have to start over. Or it could turn out not really the way you wanted, or maybe you can't even think of an idea to get started. Once you complete it, you could get rejected, or you could get laughed at, people could call you names, you could be given poor feedback, or your project could not be chosen to be put on the wall, or whatever it might be. There are so many things that can go wrong in this process that it's no wonder that we're a little bit afraid. And I've been told by some of your teachers that you've sort of been discussing a little bit the word courage lately. That's sort of been a theme for you all this year. And a lot of people have actually used that word, courageous, to describe what I do. And that always makes me laugh. Because I think, I'm just making videos and writing books. I'm not, fighting world wars and solving world hunger, right? Because I used to think that courage simply meant the ability to do something that frightens you. That is how for a long time I defined courage. And I think that's probably how most of us would define it, right? The Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz, he's not courageous because he's scared of everything. But then he finds his courage, which means he's not going to be scared anymore. That's what we think. But recently I've learned something, or I've sort of changed my mind on this definition of courage. There's an author that I really like by the name of Brené Brown. And in her new book, she talks about this word, courage. And I bet you didn't know this, but the word courage, maybe you did since you've been talking about it, but the word courage actually comes from the Latin root cor, which means heart. And in her book, Brené Brown has a very different definition than I did for courage. Her definition says this: courage is telling the story of who you are with all your heart. I'm going to say it again. Courage is telling the story of who you are with all your heart. And to me, these are the same exact words that I could use to describe art or creativity. You see, a lot of people think courage is the opposite of fear, or that courage is the absence of fear. But I've recently come to believe something different. For me, I believe that courage is the ability to stand up in the middle of your fear, and despite your fear, and to continue to tell your story with all your heart. Now, as I finish up, there's sort of one last video that I want to show you all. But before I do that, I want to tell you the story of how this video came to be. Right after we started the ANIMA series, our first video went viral, almost right away. And it got a couple million views within the first couple months of being on YouTube. And right around that time, I was receiving several emails and Facebook messages and things like that from people in my past and even current friends of mine. And each of these emails, they were bringing up darkness or sinful patterns in my past. And these people, they were making the case that because of mistakes I had made in my past, that I shouldn't be allowed to make videos and be sort of an online face for a YouTube channel that was teaching people about Jesus and trying to encourage people. They were saying that I really wasn't the right person for this job. In fact, it was absolutely wrong that I was the one to appear in these videos. And in these emails and all these messages, these people, they used a lot of harsh language, and they called me names, and some even made legitimate threats. And I'll admit to you, I was scared when this was happening. And I wasn't scared because I actually took their threats seriously. I wasn't scared that they were going to harm me. That's not what frightened me. I was scared because I believed that they were right. I was afraid that because of mistakes that I had made, or even beyond that, not just because of the mistakes I made, but because I wasn't smart enough, or because I was too young, or I wasn't funny or talented or good looking enough. I was afraid that they were right to say that somehow I didn't qualify to be an artist. I didn't qualify to create things. I didn't qualify to do my part or to answer that call in making the world a better place. And so for me, this last video, this is me finding the courage to stand up in the middle of my fear and to tell my story with all my heart. So the other day I got a message on Facebook that said, "Jon, I love the message of your videos, but not if it's coming from you. There are choices you've made in your past that render you not qualified to spread such a message." And for me, that was hard to hear, because the hypocritical Christian is something I fear. To be put in a category like that, I could think of nothing worse. So maybe there's something I should have said first. You see, I can't and won't and don't claim to be perfect. In fact, most times I'm not even good. I'll take responsibility for the mistakes I've made and the hurts I've caused. I got more than I probably should. But would God use that against me? Making good coming from my life impossible? Forgives me but refuses to use me? I don't believe in that gospel. I believe in the God of Moses. Moses was an orphan and a murderer with a stutter and a price on his head. Yet God chose this killer to be a fulfiller, performing miracles, leading his people, and making rivers flow red. I believe in the God of David. David, the shepherd boy who turned into a king, a terrible father and an adulterer from the start. Yet even with wrongdoings and iniquity, we remember him as the man after God's own heart. Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, living a life without direction. Matthew was a tax collector, the lowest of the low, yet they both walked and talked and witnessed Christ's perfection. Did God choose the Pharisees? The self-righteous and pompous, full of laws and pretension? Or did he choose cowardly Peter and persecuting Paul to spread the message of Christ's redemption? All these heroes in the Bible, not a one of them was likely. Leaning not on themselves, they leaned on God. And you know what God is? He is mighty. So can God use me? A broken, steaming mess? And can God use him or her or you? I'm here to tell you right now that the answer is yes. God can and will use anybody, even if you only go to church on Christmas. Does he only speak through the preacher? No, God is in a different business, because believing in the Lord isn't living a perfect Walgreens life, always doing right. It's letting his light shine from within and letting his word be your tutor. He'll take your broken past, helping you step into a more hopeful future, because it wasn't for perfection that Jesus died on that cross. It was for the unhealthy, so the sick could serve the sick and seek and save the lost. Because in the end, these words and these lights and these cameras and this video, it's not about me. It's about God. And with God, it's never about who you were, but about who you will be. It's God's story for the world, and we're just playing our parts. So if you're out there feeling not qualified, that's great. Because not qualified is where he starts.
Jon, thank you so much for your time with us. How about another round of applause for Jon Jorgenson? Hey, he's going to be around all day. You might have a study hall or free period. You might be able to see him around. I want to encourage you to come up and chat with him. Seniors are going to get a chance now, actually, in Capstone, to hang out some more with Jon. So you guys have a great day, and have a blessed day.